Hello and welcome to another Tiny Chat. I'm Zach Zarno here with Danielle Hirsch. We're from the National Center for State Courts. We're joined by Dave Byers. Dave, thanks for joining us. And Danielle, let's take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dave. We're delighted to have you. Because of your state's kind of leadership in proactivity in response to the pandemic, we're curious what you're seeing relating to participation rates in remote proceedings, particularly traffic.
Well, it's up, and it's kind of interesting. We're seeing it on a couple of fronts. Let me give you an example. In eviction cases, which is a high volume type of case that comes to the same court where we have lots of traffic cases, normally we'd get about 90% of the tenants not showing up when they had to come to court. This was pre-pandemic. Now that we've moved to online hearings, telephone hearings, we're getting at least anecdotal reports from our administrators and judges that they're getting about 75 to 85% of the participants showing up and participating. Now, we saw the same thing when we did some ODR projects. Those are online dispute resolution projects. And when you look at the research on ODR, I remember the data was that 40% of the people who participated in an online dispute resolution system to resolve a traffic ticket would not have been able to come to court. So these were, again, pre-pandemic research, but it really does. We're seeing that online, telephone, ODR, Zoom-type meetings or virtual meetings is significantly increasing participation.
And when you think about participation rates, especially in traffic, does it matter who you partner with? Are you working with law enforcement? And has that had any impact on the participation rates or just the system in general?
No, I think it's the system in general. So law enforcement, of course, routinely comes to court, but it's really the defendant or the citizen, their level of participation is going up. Now, of course, in traffic cases, you've got to want to contest your ticket. So a lot of people realize they violated, speed or whatever they're charged with, and will go ahead and pay their fine and plead responsible or guilty. But if you want, to contest it, it's easier, I think, right now to do so with online and virtual hearings that are going on. Particularly if you have to travel. Arizona is a big state geographically. You can drive for hours and hours and still be in the same county, more or less the state. And we have a lot of interstate traffic going through the state. So if you get a traffic ticket and want to contest it, but you have to drive hundreds of miles to the court, doing it virtually is so much easier.
Now, for those who want to pay the ticket, I know Arizona has ways that you can pay without having to go to the courthouse or across the community, and I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about that.
We do. A couple of years ago, I had the privilege of chairing what we called our Fair Justice Task Force. And it looked at two big strategic issues. One was bail reform, and the other was the imposition and collection of financial sanction, fines and fees. And you all remember there was a big look at this, a reexamination of this after Ferguson incident in the country. And when we did so, we passed a lot of legislation to give judges more flexibility to impose reasonable fines and to take into account people's ability to pay. But our task force did recognize that if you were guilty and you had a reasonable fine, then it should be enforced. And in order to do that, the task force wanted to make it as easy as possible, to give people as many options as possible. So we have what courts typically have, online payment system with credit card, debit cards. We have time payment plans. We can make it very easy. But one of the things we saw in our data and in talking with people at the courts is that at least a third, and in some cases, in some courts, 50% of the defendants, the court customers, if you will, are not in the American banking system. They're in a cash system. And so for them to pay, they can't do it online with a credit card. They don't have a credit card. They don't have a checkbook. And so for them to pay, they typically have to travel to the court. And courts are typically open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 when people are working. So that became a burden. And so what we've implemented on top of the online payment systems, a thing called Pay Near Me. It's a private partner vendor that works with us. And it allows an individual who owes a fine to get a notice from the court that gives them a barcode on their phone, or they can print it out. And they could take it to dozens, scores of private sector locations like 7-Elevens, CVS, dollar stores. And they take that up to the attendant, and they scan it. Doesn't even the person at the store doesn't even know what it's for. It could be your utility bill, it could be other things, but it just tells them the information they need. You pay in cash to that store, and the money is routed right back to the local court. So we have over 150 courts participating. We actually did this as part of the Fair Justice Task Force, but it's been a godsend during the pandemic. We're getting, we've had already payments to almost 90 different courts. We've had payments from out of state. We had 27% of the people are paying the full amount they owe, which is an average of $320. And the average payment's about $160 that's coming in. We even had one individual in the first couple of days that came in and paid $3,000 in cash. I don't know what he did for a living, but he had the cash to pay that fine. So it's another technique, and we hadn't found any other courts that were doing it. We were going to try to learn from other courts, but I think we might be the first that have implemented this. But so far, it's going really well. Our courts love it. Our citizens seem to really like it, and usage is expanding. The next thing we're going to do is look at whether we can use it to pay child support. Because when we look at people who are standing in line at our courts or coming in still, many of them are coming in to pay cash for child support. And they don't need to do that, but if they want to pay in cash, we need an alternative than coming to court. So we're going to explore using Pay Near Me for that too.
That's tremendous. I had one other question. Just when it comes to participation rates increasing, that must mean there's some calendaring questions that come into play as well. So just curious, working with law enforcement and thinking about the increased participation rate, have you had to make any adjustments on the calendaring side as well?
Well, you do. I'll tell you a couple of things we've done. Typically for like traffic court, municipal courts in our state, really it's the police officer that sets the calendar historically, because when they're out writing tickets, they're in a certain jurisdiction. There are certain parts, of the highway they patrol, or they're in a certain city, and they know what day and time their court does traffic cases. So typically on the citation, they'll write down appear at 9 a.m. Monday or 10 o'clock on Tuesday. And they were all the same. And so you have these large gatherings, something we call them sometimes cattle calls, or where scores of people show up at one time. So we didn't want that to occur. So we have law enforcement now staggering the start times. So they'll say 9, the next ticket will be 9:15, the next one 9:30, then 10, and then repeat, so that the volume of people is reduced and they come in a staggered time. The other thing I've discovered that our courts are doing is that when you get a citation, you get also a little card. We call it a bond card, but it provides information on how you can pay your ticket or go to traffic school, other alternatives. But they've modified those to also explain to citizens that if you're going to come to court, you've got to wear a mask. We're requiring people to wear masks. And they provide other information about alternative ways to schedule a hearing for court, so you don't physically have to come into court. So that's another way our courts are working with law enforcement to help get information to citizens, so they have alternatives to physically come into the court to resolve their matter.
Wonderful, very forward thinking, and thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Danielle, did you have further questions?
No, just thank you, Dave. That was great.
Yeah, that was great. You nailed it. We're gonna cut it to start, cut it to end, and then the whole thing rolls. Yeah. You made my life real easy. I appreciate that.
That was a mic drop, Dave. Yeah. Normally it's not quite that easy.
Thanks again to Dave Byers from the Arizona Judicial Branch for some really great tips and tricks there. Thank you for watching. Tiny Chats are available at ncsc.org/tinychats. If you'd like to talk with Danielle or I about any of our previous topics or this one, it's ncsc.org/drtinychat. And I hope you will, please subscribe at ncsc.org/tinychat subscribe. You'll get an email every time a new chat is available. Thanks, and be well.